Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to our continued study of chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita. So, this week we're going to be discussing the continuation of Krishna's opulence is discussed, and then some different degrees or types of surrender to Krishna. So this chapter is entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge, and we discussed this Guyam. Krishna says Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, meaning the king of all confidential knowledge, the most confidential. So he said there are 3 levels of confidential knowledge. The first we got very beginning in the second chapter, knowledge that I am spirit soul. Then the second level of knowledge, of confidential knowledge, is about how to achieve Krishna by remembering him and doing devotional service. This was given in chapter 8. And now we're getting the most confidential knowledge, which is the aspects of pure devotional service and the knowledge about his mystic opulences. Okay? So Krishna has been making some statements that have seemingly, and I emphasize the word seemingly, contradictions. He is speaking about these, I am within and without. I am here but not here. And these statements are made for a very particular purpose. To express the inconceivable potency of Krishna. Why do they seem like contradictions? Because we're using our own reference points to try to understand Krishna. How can Krishna be doing all of this creation and yet be aloof, unmoved? How can he lift a giant mountain with his left hand? Because I cannot do it. This must be some story or fiction. So they're inconceivable as we compare ourselves to someone so great. Just as a small child finds things that the father does to be amazing or almost inconceivable. How he can lift this big suitcase. I can't even budget. Because a child is comparing himself to the father. Similarly, on a much more extreme or accentuated relative differential, when we try to compare or hear about the glories of Krishna, they seem inconceivable because we think, I can't do that. But these potencies are very important for us, because Krishna is going to explain that when we have faith in these mystic opulences, then one is able to take to the process of pure devotional service. So these mystic opulences, on one hand, we sometimes wonder, what is the importance of them? I mean, I prefer to hear about Krishna's, pastimes of Damodar Leela and these different, very sweet pastimes. And yes, of course, those are very sweet and pleasing to the devotee. And they are the most enchanting, of course. But to come to that platform of pure devotional service where those pastimes can really penetrate the heart, we must engage in pure devotional service. And Krishna is going to explain that one must have faith in these opulences in order to come to the platform of pure devotional service. So they're an important stepping stone to his realm of pure devotional service. And we discussed some amazing potencies last week, or last time, I should say. How he is the maintainer of everything, yet he's not even involved. How many of us would like to maintain our home but not have to actually do anything? We would love it. Right? But that's Krishna's potency. Just by his will, things happen. He says, all beings are in me, but I am not in them. Meaning he can be present everywhere, within every atom, yet maintain his separate existence in the spiritual world, enjoying with his devotees. So these are just some of the qualities that we discussed. So we'll see a few more in the coming couple verses. Okay? So let's read verse 9.9. We'll read up to 9.15 today, so not so many verses today. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these activities, seated as though neutral. So just to refresh our memory, Krishna is referencing verse 8, which he said, the whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So Krishna is like saying the whole cosmic order is under his guidance and his will. But then he says, it's happening automatically. Right? So Krishna is saying, O Dhananjaya, all this work. What is this work he's referring to? What he was speaking of in the prior verses. Okay? So this is important because Krishna's work does not bind him. He's fully detached, neutral. Just like Krishna has been telling us, you work in a non-binding way. Krishna is also not bound by his actions. So he's doing detached action also. Right? So what is the meaning of Krishna being detached? It means that he has no attachment to the activities of the material world. He is not creating these universes for some personal gain, some personal objective. Right? He has nothing to gain or lose by anything that happens in this material world. He is fully detached. So why then is he annihilating and creating again and again? To fulfill the desire of all of us. He is doing it to meet our desires. Because we have a desire to be separate from Krishna, he is facilitating. He gets no satisfaction though, nor any dissatisfaction. He's fully neutral, detached. So we see Krishna is telling us always to be detached from the fruits, to be equipoised. Well, Krishna is the same in the material affairs. They're carrying on, but he is detached. So then how are these material activities carried out? Who manages all the movements of the planets, arrangements of nature, creation of so many universes, keeping them all on perfect schedule? You must have a big book or a computer system. Or now we talk about artificial intelligence or data warehouses and data lakes. Krishna must have all of this so he can keep track of all this. Some nice business intelligence dashboard. He doesn't need any of that. It's simply happening by Krishna's material energies, his potencies. Right? He himself is just involved in playing on his flute, enjoying with his devotees. And Krishna is saying here that he is neutral. And what does his neutrality mean? So although his hands are in everything, not even a blade of grass cannot move without his sanction. He's neutral. He has nothing to gain or lose by these activities. Prabhupada gives the example of the judge. The judge is neutral. He is giving some punishment, giving some rewards, giving different judgments. But the judge himself or herself is not impacted by those activities. When somebody is hung, the judge moves on, simply carrying out the... If the judge gives some big reward, he's also not elated and excited, just carrying out his duty. Neutral. Right? And this detachment again. So Krishna does not get caught up in the creation and destruction. He's telling us, do our duty without attachment. Don't be happy when results come, and don't be unhappy when they don't. Elevate your consciousness to a higher platform. He's not saying don't be happy. He's saying detach from the material affairs. Right? We discussed this in the prior chapters. But be attached to Krishna. So Krishna similarly, he is detached from all these material creations. But it doesn't mean he has no attachment. He's simply unemotional with anyone. No, he's fully attached with his devotees. He is so happy in rendering service to his devotees. So he's actually saddened to see us separated from him. He has a longing to be reunited with all of his living entities. So he's neutral in the affairs, he's detached from the affairs, but he's never detached from us. He's not detached from us. We spoke about that personal relationship that Krishna has with each and every living entity. So while he's neutral and detached, he's neutral and detached in this realm of the material affairs. Just like we should be equipoised and detached from what happens materially. But we shouldn't become stone-like or unemotional, right? But our energy, our investment should be in our spiritual life. So we see this beautifully, that whatever Krishna says is good for us, we see he also is doing. So he's the perfect leader, leading by example. Even though even he doesn't have to do. But this is his nature. Okay? 10th verse. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings, under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So just continue to reiterate this point, because it's not so easy for us to comprehend. Again, repetition is by design to help reinforce an important concept. So Krishna is saying he is the cause of all creations. But he is aloof. At the same time, he is the cause. And so we see this word Maya Dyakshena. That this is happening under my direction. Maya means my. Adya means under. Aksha, eyes. Under my eyes. So Krishna is the supreme superintendent. So let us not forget, in the detachment, in the neutrality, he is the doer. He is the supreme controller. So don't mistake the neutrality and detachment for the fact that, there must be some other cause. No. everything is happening under Krishna's direction. And, of course, this will later lead us to a very important conclusion. If everything is happening under Krishna's under Krishna's direction, then who should be the exclusive source or object of our surrender? Krishna. Because there's no other person or entity that is operating with this type of independence. So within Krishna, everything else is a secondary cause. So there becomes no reason to look elsewhere. And Krishna will explain that in the coming up verses. So this management is done by the material nature, but under the direction of Krishna. Right? So material nature, without the authority of Krishna, cannot do anything. It has no ability. Krishna activates the Mahatattva, all the material elements. How? By his glance. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport. By simply glancing, everything starts. When we see a sink full of dishes in a home, wouldn't it be nice if I just glanced at them and they become clean and even put away? How nice that would be. I could just glance at a load of laundry, it would be folded. Right? This is Krishna's inconceivable. He just glances at the material nature and things start moving. Even the living entities become impregnated into the material world. Okay? So, Krishna is the ultimate cause, but he is not the direct cause. It is directly being happened. He does not engage in matter. He never directly engages in matter. That is left to his agents, right? The material nature. And Prabhupada gives another example of the king ruling with his ministers. The king is managing the entire affairs by their ministers, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj. They're managing all the affairs by their ministers. But those great devotees were always engaged in their spiritual activities. But the ministers, without the power and authority of the king, they have no power themselves. So the ministers are working under the direction and guidance of the king. But the ministers are the ones seen in all the different parts of the land doing various activities, while the king is enjoying in his palace. So similarly, Krishna is enjoying in his palace, Goloka Vrindavan, with all of his devotees. Yet, the different agents of his administration are carrying out these various activities. So in a very similar, it's a bit of a material example, but just to give us some illustration, how one can be simultaneously in charge of everything, yet detached. I mentioned how the living entities even enter the material nature by the glance of Krishna. So life comes not from matter. It comes from Krishna. And this glancing is the extent of his involvement. And even Krishna himself is not glancing. We know he expands himself through different expansions, ultimately to Mahavishnu. So this is the separation. He's unaffected. And Prabhupada gives another analogy, another example for us to try to, contextualize this. And he speaks about the smelling of a flower. When we smell a flower, the flower itself is unaffected by my process of smelling. So similarly, Krishna is glancing over the material nature, but he's unaffected by all the subsequent activities of creation. It's just happening. So flower is the cause of the smell, but is unaffected. Just like Krishna is a cause of all this creation, yet unaffected. So, even though he has no attachment, though, he still does it. He still does all the creation and destruction. Why again? Due to our desire. Again, we do our duty. Why I should do my duty? Because that's what we need to do, even though we are detached from the result. So Krishna is also doing, even though he is detached. So these are more of Krishna's inconceivable potencies. How great he is that he can do it in this way. No mere human can do this type of work. Forget about creating some universe. We cannot even, create one set of clean dishes by our glance. Just to illustrate the extraordinary potency of Krishna. So Prabhupada concludes this section with a really nice summary. He says, in summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do anything. Yet, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is detached from all material activities. A nice summary for this. Okay? So now, we get to this very famous verse. Now, knowing all this, how come everybody doesn't see it? Why doesn't everybody just surrender right there? It's lack of faith. He says in the 11th verse, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Now, if we just read this single verse in Bhagavad Gita, so much confusion could be eradicated. Right? Why not worship him? Because we are fooled by Krishna's human form. What does it mean? We see him as a human. Okay, maybe an advanced human, a powerful human. But we don't understand him as Ishvara Parama Krishna. We don't understand him as Anadir Adir, the source of everything, or the Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. We may see him as some wonderful person, or we may see him as we may see him as one of the many avatars, but we don't see him as the Supreme Lord of all that be, as Krishna says here. That's who he is. But until we see Krishna as that Supreme Personality of Godhead, we'll be fooled. And there's confusion. When we hear about Krishna's pastimes through an unauthorized way, we become bewildered. How this boy can be tied up to a grinding mortar. He can't be supreme. I would not be tied up by some grinding mortar. I would be able to. He can't be supreme. Oh, Krishna, he is one of the Dashavatars. He is not number one in that list, so he must not be supreme. Krishna has only 2 arms. Vishnu has 4 arms. So Vishnu must be supreme. Like this, we hear certain logic, not coming from Shastra, not coming from Guru Parampara. And thus, we become bewildered, foolish, murda. So, we should be very careful not to become bewildered. And here, from Krishna himself, he says, they do not know my transcendental nature is supreme. And we see many nice pastimes to show us the example of not being bewildered. Lord Indra was bewildered. And thus he showered torrential rains on Vrindavan. Lord Brahma was wondering, this child, this boy, has just killed a great demon, Akansura. And now he is eating with his friends, holding foodstuffs in his left hand, exchanging contaminated foods with his friends. How this can be the Supreme Lord? So he performed the very beautiful pastime of stealing the cowherd boys and calves. And Krishna showed He expanded himself into every single calf and every single cowherd boy so perfectly that even their mothers could not detect that their children were gone and that this was only Krishna. And in each home he was living exactly how that child was there. And he showing so much variety. And for 1 year this carried on, not just for a few moments. You may fool somebody for a brief moment. 1 year. Just to show his potency. His amazing potency. When Lord Brahma, became awakened to his, mistake, his illusion, he saw all the cowherd boys and calves as Lord Vishnu. He thought, what's going on? And then, of course, he saw so many other amazing things that really struck him. So he understood then, it's Krishna. He is very different from us. So Krishna's form is not like our form. Though he has 2 arms, 2 legs, it's not a human form. Right? Our form is resembling him. He is the source of the original form. But we impose our ability on Krishna. And that is when we become into a foolish state. But actually Krishna's form is inconceivable for us. How is a baby? He can conquer some giant demon. Because in our baby form, we couldn't even roll over from one side to the other. We had to simply lie. And somebody carry us when we're 1 week old, 2 week old. Because we think how Krishna can kill the giant Putana or Tirnarvata. These big, big demons. He was just a baby. Because his form is not like ours. So many cannot conceive how appearing like a similar to us, he can be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada in the purport speaks a lot about the Mayavadi conclusions or philosophy. They acknowledge Krishna appeared on the battlefield. But they say this is a temporary form. Eternally, he is formless. He only exists like this when he comes to the material world. He is forced by Maya to take a form. Yes, all these incarnations are there. But it's all temporary. And thus they say it's illusion. It doesn't exist for real. But we know Krishna's form is eternal. And this knowledge is very valuable because that's why he told us, Janma karma cha me divyam. If you know the nature of my appearance and activities, you become liberated, free from all of this. So Krishna's omnipresence, the fact that he is present everywhere, it fools everybody. There's many thinking he has lost his original form. How he can be present in Paramatma, how he can be present in his immaterial energy, yet unchanged in the spiritual world. So the Mayavadis say, no, in the spiritual world he is formless. They don't know that his form is Satchitananda Vigraha. It's eternal. This Vigraha, it's eternal. It's constant, not like our material body that is temporary. So, if we overcome Maya by surrendering to Krishna, then how Krishna can be forced by Maya to take a form? It's foolish, Prabhupada says in the purport. He already said, Daivi hesha guna mai mama maya, Mam eva ye prapadyate. He says, if one surrenders unto me, you can overcome this divine energy, this Daivihesha of Maya. It's difficult to overcome, but by surrendering to me, you can. Well, then how? By surrendering to Krishna, if you can overcome Maya, how Maya can overcome Krishna? It doesn't work. It's foolish. So all these points Prabhupada is making in this purport. It's quite a long purport to make sure we have very clear understanding. And also, as practicing devotees, we are equipped with the information to refute such understandings, such knowledge. And we have so much proof of how Krishna's form is different from ours. Prabhupada talks about this aspect of control. We all have some control, at least we want more than we have, but we have some control. But always somebody is above us. Someone is always controlling us. We are not independent. We think we want to be, but we're not. And what is the proof that we are not independent? If we had full control, would we ever fail? Would any of our desires ever go unfulfilled? No. Something beyond our control is preventing us from accomplishing our desired goal. Or I tried to do this and it failed. It means something else is more powerful than my desire. When we say to err is human, or that we are fallible, therein lies the proof we are not the controller. But Krishna, his will is never superseded. Except for, of course, by the love of his pure devotees, which he gladly surrenders. But Krishna is always in the supreme control position. So there is a very distinct difference between us and him. Material bodies cannot do what Krishna can do. Create and destroy universes. We cannot even create one single mosquito. Yet Krishna can create 8.4 million species of life. Just see in nature, and you'll be amazed by Krishna's creative potency. And this is just what we can observe in one planet amongst millions of universes. But you'll marvel at all the varieties of creation. So, Krishna has his potency, his form is so much more powerful. We should never become to the foolish state thinking, oh, it's just some, ordinary human, like the Buddhas do. Krishna is saying all entities rest on him, but he is not within them. He is maintaining everything, yet aloof. How can an ordinary human create millions of universes and destroy them, yet have no attachment to it? How peaceful is our mind when we have to manage one small thing? Maybe it's an event, maybe it's even one temple, maybe it's one group or organization. Our mind is constantly in flux. But that temple, that organization, that group, in the context of this planet, is very tiny. This planet, in the context of the universe, is very tiny. That single universe, in the context of the whole of material creation, is very tiny. The whole of creation, material creation, is small compared to the spiritual. Yet Krishna is creating all of this, and he's not the least bit disturbed emotionally, mentally. He's fully peaceful and happy. We barely have peace managing one job, one home, few children. We barely have peace of mind. So again, over and over and over again, We're hearing about these potencies so that we don't fall into this trap of the 11th verse, to deride Krishna when we see him in his human form, to underestimate his extraordinary abilities when we just step back and see what he can do in comparison to us. All of this is happening, yet he is not distracted in Goloka Vrindavan. Like when we go on vacation, we may be distracted by our phones, checking our emails, doing things. We're occupied. But Krishna, everything is happening, yet his full attention is with his devotees. So we see this potency of Krishna appearing. We just celebrated Janmashtami. He appeared in the jailhouse in this giant four-armed form of Lord Narayan, bedecked with jewels and crown and royal garb, and then immediately took the form of a small baby. We appear crying, helpless in this baby form. So Krishna performs so many different activities to show to us. We just have to see. And we know, knowing this, knowing about his activities, his form, his birth, one can achieve liberation. So only a fool, a Buddha, would consider Krishna to be an ordinary being. And this is why verse 4.9 is so powerful. Simple, yet powerful. Most do not understand the nature of his appearance and activities. So when we celebrate Janmashtami, it's an opportunity to reinforce our understanding of the Supreme Lord. Krishna has these unlimited potencies. And while he enjoys showing his, human-like pastimes, if you will, with his devotees, these potencies are also important so that we understand and don't fall victim to the trap of the Buddhas. Okay? So now, what happens when one has this understanding? The foolish understanding. 12. Those who are bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Everything is doomed. If you don't accept Krishna as the supreme, if you think his form is material, there is no hope for liberation. Even your fruitive activities, your karma kanda desires are doomed. Your ashtanga yoga desires are doomed. Your knowledge, your gyan, everything is doomed. If we don't understand who is Krishna. And due to the demoniac views, they'll not surrender to Krishna. And thus, when you don't surrender to Krishna, one does not relish, taste the sweetness of devotional service. And what is the principal reason one denies the supremacy of Krishna? Envy. Envy. Why you? Why not me? No. Yes, even you may be able to do these great things, the Mayavadis will say. They may even say Krishna can do these great things. But they think that when we liberate, we'll also become equal to God. How foolish. They may even acknowledge their inferiority today, but they say that is only temporary. When we become liberated, we'll also become God. So foolish. But it's persuasive if we don't have good foundation knowledge to understand. They say the only difference between us and God is the material nature. Once we transcend, we're all the same. So foolish. So, Prabhupada writes in the commentary of the purport here how dangerous it is to consider Krishna as an ordinary human, what one should do. He says, if one sees the face of such a believer, one must take bath in the Ganges. Just seeing the face of such a person. So we can understand the great danger. Because one eternally remains delusioned and they'll continue suffering in the cycle of birth and death based on their desire, understanding. 13, O son of Pratap, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So now Krishna says, well, those who are not deluded, they are the Mahatmas. And what do they know? They know Krishna as the Supreme. So the fools, the mutas, do not understand Krishna as Supreme. The Mahatma, they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Mahatma, that is the Uttama Adhikari, the highest qualified devotee. And what is the position of a Mahatma? They're situated under the divine nature. Daivim Prakritim Ashita. They've taken shelter of this divine nature. The conditioned soul, we are marginal. Because sometimes we choose to associate with the divine energy, sometimes we choose to associate with the material energy. Thus we are marginal. The Mahatma, however, is 100% focused on Krishna. Krishna says they're fully engaged. So they are always under the protection. Note, Krishna says protected by the divine nature. Sometimes they come to the material world to deliver all of us, the great acharyas, the great gurus, to render service. These Mahatmas, we should not think to be ordinarily conditioned souls. Why? Because they are protected by Krishna. They are under the protection of his divine nature, even within the material world. They are fully engaged in spiritual service. That is the pure devotee. Right? So Krishna told us how to achieve this position, to become fully engaged in the divine nature. We just quoted the verse, Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Mayam Durataya. Yes, it's Durataya, it's difficult. But Mameva Ye Prapatyante Mayam Mitam Tatantite. Just surrender to Krishna. And Krishna says easily crosses over to material nature. So what does it mean to surrender? Long topic. In summary, simply, depend on Krishna. Stop trying to save ourselves. 100% depend on Krishna. Now, how one can come to that stance? How I can just say, oh yeah, I'm going to depend on Krishna? Well, we need to have faith that Krishna can protect us. Not only he can, but that he will. We have to have faith both that he has the ability to protect us and that he will. Just like a child. Child has faith that father can protect them and will. But we know even a father's ability to protect is limited. But when we have faith in all of these potencies, these amazing mystic opulences, his yoga Mashayam, his breath and strength, then it's easy to have faith in Krishna. So when we know Krishna can do so many amazing things without even being disturbed, he can create millions of universes, then we'll never be fearful that, oh, what if he forgets about us? What if he doesn't have time for us? Sometimes we wonder, oh, what if Krishna's busy doing something else he forgets about? He's not even busy creating millions of universes and everything is happening perfectly. But if we apply our understanding to Krishna, that he could forget, he might not have time, he might be disturbed, then we have fear. Oh, Krishna might forget us. But if we have faith in these mystic opulences, then there is never any concern of ours. Krishna is always there to protect us. He has already told us that. Surdam Sarva Bhutanam. He is our ever well-wisher. And he's going to tell us in a few verses, more definitively, or more additional, I can say, in the information, how he is going to preserve what we have and carry what we lack. So these opulences, again, when we have strong faith in them, then it's easy to surrender to Krishna. It's actually the only intelligent, logical conclusion. Why? Our own attempts at self-preservation are so limited, but Krishna's protection is unlimited. So he has the ability and the desire to both. So when we have that, then we can surrender to Krishna. And that is the position of the Mahatma. How Srila Prabhupada was fully surrendered to Krishna. Even in the most dire of situations, they would have broken, at least me, but not all of you. But he had faith, unshakable faith. He understood these opulences of Krishna. That's why, again, knowing and faith in these opulences is the key ingredient to pure devotional service. It's a key ingredient to this mood of surrender. And that's the Mahatma. And Prabhupada writes how the Mahatma became a Mahatma through association with other Mahatmas. By associating with the pure devotees. One can acquire this same understanding. So by associating with Srila Prabhupada, by reading his books every day, by associating with the pure devotees, one can become inspired to that same platform. And what Mahatma means? Great soul. It is not a title of heredity. It is not a title of as bestowed by society. Why? Because we'll see in the next verse 14. What did the Mahatma do? Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So these are the 4 activities and symptoms of a Mahatma. 1, constantly chanting the glories of Krishna. No other sense enjoyment. Nothing else is discussed. Glorifying the names, forms, pastimes, and qualities of Krishna. That is the activity of a Mahatma. Determined. Prabhupada comments. Following Ekadashi. We just had a wonderful Ekadashi yesterday. Following the different activities. Rising early, chanting our rounds. Staying consistent in our services. Despite all kinds of conditions. That is the nature of a Mahatma. Humble. Offering obeisances, bowing down. No envy of Krishna. No envy of any living entity. Great humility. Constant, perpetual worship, Krishna says. Never deterred. This is Srila Prabhupada in a nutshell. Anything we see him ever not speaking about Krishna, so determined to overcome all obstacles. Humble, loving, tolerant to all living entities. And constant, 24/7 engaged. This is the symptoms. This is the best measure of a Mahatma. You cannot fake these symptoms. It's not a rubber stamp. You are a Mahatma. No. It is done by action, by symptoms. Krishna says in this verse the word mam twice. Acharya's comment. This is to understand only Krishna is the object of worship. He is the exclusive object of worship, as we saw in the verse of pure devotional service. Krishna Anushilanam. And then Prabhupada comments at the end to give us some nice faith. This is an easy and joyful process. Susukam kartam avyayam. Right? As we heard in the second verse of this chapter. How kind is Krishna? Made the process joyful. Eating, dancing, singing, feasting, joying with Krishna. Not intense austerity, millions of lifetimes needed to come to this stage. Just surrender under guidance of Guru, and it is all there. That is the great mercy of Krishna. But still there are others who will not surrender to Krishna. So we saw those who do not surrender, the fools. Then Krishna spoke about the Mahatmas, the great souls, who have these wonderful characteristics. And now, Krishna says in 15, others. Others, compared to the prior persons discussed. Others who engage in the sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as one without a second, or as diverse in many and in a universal form. So there are three levels of worshiping Krishna, the Krishna worshippers. Prabhupada opens the purport with, the Mahatma we just discussed. Then we saw in the 7th chapter the 4 pious souls, the Artha, Jignasu, and Jnani, who are motivated in their worship of Krishna for something in desire. And now we see, 3 types of Jnanis. They are lower than even the 4 types of pious souls. Right? So those who are purely in Krishna consciousness, they know nothing else but Krishna. They worship only Krishna. These are the Mahatmas that we talked about. But others also worship Krishna, but not in the same way. And the 3 categories are given here. 1, and Prabhupada says, he who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord. So these are the Mayavadis, the Jnana Mayavadi. Right? They know they're eternal, and thus Prabhupada says in the purport, that is some type of worship of God, but clearly not in the correct way. The second, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that. The mentality of such a person, whatever you worship, it's all the same. You pick and you choose. All the same. Even up to the point of the demigods, the devatas. They are God. Nature is God. Sachin Tendulkar is God. We see all these, and we'll see this in the last section of Bhagavad Gita. People manufacture their object of worship in the mode of ignorance, mode of passion. And then the third, those who accept the universal form, the Vishwarupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships that. So those who think and understand that this universe, there's nothing beyond this material creation, which is all residing within the universal form, as we'll see in 2 chapters from now, and that is supreme. So of all these 3, the lowest of all is he who worships himself as one with the Lord. That is, again, the most dangerous position. From the other positions, at least one can elevate and purify from. But the first position is very, very dangerous. It is born out of this envy and hatred of Krishna. So Krishna is explained now so far in the first half of this chapter, these different topics. And now we'll continue next week discussing about the different sacrifices and a little bit more about kind of Krishna's position and what he is giving, and ultimately his reciprocation to the pure devotees of Lord, in which he'll describe, the very famous verse describing pure devotional service, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Okay? Well, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions or discussion today? Hare Krishna Bhakti Dandava Pranams.
I got one question, not question actually, you already answered it. I just forgot, I just want to confirm it.
Yes.
So, what was the answer for this question? Like, Krishna is the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, he is not the supreme.
Yeah. So Krishna has established himself throughout this Bhagavad Gita already as the Supreme Lord, right? He said in the 7th chapter, there's no truth superior to me. And then he says, the fools, in this 11th verse, don't understand me to be the supreme of all that be. Okay? So our Shastra is very explicitly clear. It's black and white. That Krishna is the source. He is Krishnastu Bhagavam Swayam. He is the source of all incarnations. So Lord Brahma has established Ishvara Parama Krishna. Controller, the ultimate, the highest controller. That is Krishna. Okay? So we have all these different evidences. But if we go by our own mental concoction, speculation, we may be incorrect in our understanding. Not maybe, most likely will be. Right? So when we see the royal opulent, Mahavishnu, bigger, grander, must be supreme. Okay? So that logic is flawed. So instead of relying on our logic, we must go to Shastra. And Krishna has established himself as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. He'll do it again in chapter 11. Again, not for his satisfaction, but for our benefit. And Shastra throughout all points to and establishes this, so that when this confusion arises in the hearts or minds of someone, we just explain via Shastra, and is very simply understood. So, okay. Yes, bro.
In which Veda or Upanishad is explained completely?
I'm not sure where, or if it is even explained more fully. I don't know where more. Yeah, I'm not familiar with where more of that may be presented. Hare, Dhanavad Pranams. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhamma Pranam, and Jai Shri Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have a couple of questions, I think. First one is that this understanding of the Mayavadi's point of view, you said that they consider basically this Krishna's incarnation as temporary. So their viewpoint is that when he comes to the material world, he is just like a human being, like a normal human being, and this incarnation is temporary. I mean, I don't understand what part of the supreme then they understand.
It varies a little bit, but they may even acknowledge that that Krishna has some potencies beyond them, but their understanding, their philosophy is that this form Krishna has, it only exists in the material world, and thus it is Maya. It's temporary. Just like our body that we have, it's temporary. So in some way you can say it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist, it just doesn't exist permanently. So their philosophy says that, yeah, even if Krishna has some potencies that are beyond what I can do, when I achieve the liberated state, I achieve that same position, because Krishna is impersonal and I am impersonal, and I'll merge and we'll all become one. So that is the philosophy that the Mayavadi will play. Because someone might logically say, well, wait a minute, Krishna can do this, but you can't, so doesn't that prove you're not God? They'll argue back saying, no, Krishna does this, but we all can do that in our impersonal feature. That's the philosophy they purport. And if we don't have good knowledge, good evidence, we may become bewildered. And that's why Srila Prabhupada, comments. Sometimes people wonder why Prabhupada comments so much throughout so many of these purports, refuting this philosophy. Because if we're not equipped with the real knowledge, we may become bewildered. Krishna himself is going to explain this impersonal path in the 12th chapter. And he's going to discuss it directly. So, that answer the question, Mataji?
Yeah, I'm just verifying what I understood. So I'm just trying to understand their point of view and then know what we are. So basically, you're saying that Mayavadi is saying that Krishna is having certain potencies, but those potencies are only restricted to him when he's in the spiritual world. But when he comes to the material world, he just becomes he assumes this material body just like us. Correct? And that's why their philosophy is that when we lose this material body, or when we merge with the Brahman or whatever, we become God. That is their viewpoint. Am I correct with that?
Let me just adjust a little bit there. They don't acknowledge that Krishna has a form in the spiritual world. He's not a person. That's the foundation of their philosophy. And what that allows them to then do is come to the next step, which is, well, then we can all become God. So that's a fundamental philosophy. That in the spiritual liberated state, Krishna has no form and the living entity has no form. They all merge into one. So there's no question really of any potency, because there's no activity. There's just impersonal, which again passes no logic. But when Krishna descends to the material world, he assumes a form. So when God descends to the material world, he assumes a form. But when he returns, he merges back into impersonal. Again, it has no logic, no basis. It's foolish, but that's the philosophy.
Sorry, probably one more thing. So what they are saying is that when he comes to the material world and he's performing all these inconceivable things, right? So those things, they do not believe that Krishna is lifting the Govardhan and all that stuff. So they are not believing all that stuff.
Some of it they may, some of it they may not. Even if they believe it, they think that they'll acquire that same ability in their impersonal, because they're also going to become God. So they may even acknowledge, yes, in this current state, he can do things I cannot do. But when I become liberated, I'll become God. right? So that's how. No, yeah, you're Krishna. Yeah, he can lift Govardhan, but don't worry, you can also,
Okay.
right? So they won't necessarily outrightly. They may internally deny it also, but externally they may acquiesce to that understanding.
And last question, just one you were comparing, I think Prabhupada's perfect. I read it, but I could not understand. So how by, you said something like how by surrendering to Krishna you can overcome Maya. Then how come, what about Krishna something you said, right? What is that? So
Yeah.
now you,
Yeah. So in the 11th verse in the purport, Prabhupada gives this example. It's a very nice one, that because the Mayavadi philosophy says that Krishna is forced by Maya to take a form. That means Maya is forcing something upon Krishna, which is superior. That means Maya is superior to Krishna, right? If something forces. So, but Prabhupada is saying that if overcoming Maya, you do so by surrendering to Krishna, then clearly Krishna is the one who can remove Maya from us. So if Krishna is removing Maya from us by surrendering to him, how Maya could force something upon him? It doesn't make sense.
yeah.
It has no logic, right? So if Krishna is the source of our overcoming Maya, then how that source of overcoming Maya could become overcome by it? It doesn't work. Krishna must be the controller of Maya. Okay? Otherwise, we'd have to go to some stronger power than even Maya to overcome her. But Krishna says, Ma'ameva ye prapadyante. You surrender unto me, and it will happen. So that's the point Prabhupada's making.
And last question is, this I know this thing comes then again, maybe I'm not able to understand. Like why repeatedly we are told here that about the Brahma, we talk about the bewilderment of Indra. I mean, they are such exalted personalities. We understand Krishna is supreme, but when they are being bewildered, then how Krishna is expecting that we will not be bewildered, or then how does Krishna expect that we will be able to come out of this when such exalted personalities have become bewildered, despite even meeting Krishna personally, all that has happened, but still they were in that influence, right? So in that high position, they could fall. So we are already, unless they're surrounded by this, and Maya, maybe Krishna is being so powerful. Like how we can actually come to that? I know suddenly Krishna is saying, but
No. The Mahatma. Associate with the Mahatma. Mahatma is not bewildered. Mahatma satatam kirtayantoma. Always. Perpetually. The Mahatma is never bewildered. So, surrender to the pure devotee of the Lord and acquire knowledge, instruction, and mercy from them, and they'll inspire your progress in devotional life. Right? Yes, you're absolutely right. Lord Brahma, Lord Indra are great exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord. But who's even greater? The residents of Vrindavan. They are the perfected devotees. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and gave us the process of achieving that position. Otherwise, we have no hopes of getting to that exalted position. You're right, it's very high compared to where we are. But by the unlimited mercy, Mahavadanaya, most merciful Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us access, the potency, the ability to reach that highest platform of purity. Yes, on our own, no hope. Absolutely zero. But by the unlimited mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that can be achieved. If we have strong desire, determination, and humility. Acknowledging, I cannot do it. Acknowledging greater persons than me have also faltered. That is the only purpose for discussing those pastimes. Not to think, they made a mistake. No. It is to imbue humility upon us, thinking, wow, if they can do it, I'm almost guaranteed to do it. Oh, but by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I'm guaranteed to be successful if I take to it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this opportunity, and it continues to be alive today through Guru Parampara. If we just follow Srila Prabhupada and his teachings, one is assured success. So it is good, we should understand, yes, these very exalted personalities have struggled. That should create humility in our heart, not judgment. It should create humility. Wow. And it should create determination. I better not think, oh, I am second initiated, I am Bhakti Shastri certified, I am this, I am that, I am now safe. No. That is the purpose of studying this. But then at the same time, have extraordinary faith and confidence in the mercy of Krishna, who came to show us this path of devotional service. If we feel it's impossible, then we don't have faith in Krishna, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So yes, we should understand it to be a very exalted position, but at the same time, we always talk about carrying two things in our hands, right? Humility, determination. We carry one that is a very high position, and I have no chance of getting it on my own. But with the mercy of Krishna, it's attainable. And that was, if we remember, one of the symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. That one almost demands it, has such an intense desire. There's an expectation of it. But coupled with this humility. So, that is the mood in which we have to approach it. And again, if we hear these pastimes but we don't understand them through Guru Parampara, we'll become judgmental. Or we'll become bewildered in some way. Which is why we constantly understand the importance of hearing. Why Prabhupada in all his purport virtually is talking about how you become a Mahatma by associating with a Mahatma. Right? So, we should have full faith it can happen. Remember, the fifth offense of chanting the holy names of the Lord is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. What does that mean? When we don't have faith that by chanting the Mahamantra under the instruction of Guru, we cannot achieve the highest position. It means then there might be some imperfection. No, it can uplift the most fallen of fallen persons. And Krishna is going to resolve our doubt in several verses towards the end of this chapter. Where he's going to say, even a dog eater can be uplifted to the highest position of pure devotional service by following this process. So that's how we can understand. Is that okay, Mataji?
Thank you so much. This is a beautiful explanation. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. One other comment on Brahma Vimohan Lila. Read in Krishna book Prabhupada's description of that. He describes that very nicely, not as a mistake by Brahma, but a way to illustrate Krishna's potencies. It's a very nice lens from which to see that pastime. So take a look at that. The way Prabhupada very nicely describes that in the, I think, 14th chapter of Krishna book. It gives us a nice perspective. It was a way to have Krishna show his potencies, not necessarily a mistake by Brahma.
Sure, Prabhuji, I will do that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, there are some questions.
Hare Krishna.
One question, Prabhu, from 9.1 to first point. Last chapter, pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features such as forearm, Mahavishnu. They are simply attracted by the two-arm form of Krishna. They are not attracted by other features of Krishna. How can we take this, Prabhu?
Yeah. I didn't touch on it, but I'm glad you're bringing it up because it's an important understanding. So, when one is attracted to something, it doesn't mean they are unattracted or disrespectful to something else. So, I may love my mother very, very much, but it doesn't mean I don't love or I disrespect your mother or father, right? So, we have to understand that, because it's sometimes when we think, oh, they're not attracted to this, well, what it means is their attachment to Krishna is so extraordinary, because Krishna is all attractive. He is the source of everything, that they don't have, some deep attraction to these other features of Krishna. Why? Because in these other features of Krishna, remember, Mahavishnu is an expansion of Krishna. It's an avatar. But in that expansion, there's a very grand and awe-reverential feature. There's no opportunity to play with Mahavishnu. No opportunity to enjoy the different pure devotional rasas of, Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa. Right? So they prefer that this Mahavishnu is an expansion of Krishna to perform some activity, but they are not so awed by the grandness of Mahavishnu. They are awed by the grandness of Krishna as a cowherd boy and what he can do. So they're not disrespectful. You can't love Krishna and disrespect Mahavishnu, right? It's the same person in two different features. It's just they love the feature of Krishna at home. They're not so desirous to enjoy with Krishna in the office. Just like if you work with your friend, you enjoy a relationship with your friend more outside of the office than in the office. In the office, you have to work. You cannot joke around and have fun. You enjoy your relationship with that friend outside of the office. But it's not like you don't like the person in the office. It's the same person. Just two different moods. So the pure devotee, they enjoy Krishna outside of the office, where Krishna can exhibit his full personality. And thus, that is what they aspire for. That is where their full attention is. So, and that is the, purest understanding of the Supreme Lord in devotional service. But sometimes, in our impure state, we misunderstand. Oh, the grandness of Mahavishnu has some superior, or maybe more, to offer. So that's the way the Mahatma, they're just fully absorbed. And there's a beautiful pastime of the gopis. After Krishna had left the Rasa Lila, the gopis began to search for Krishna. So Krishna performed one very sweet pastime. So he stood there in this form of Narayan. And the gopis saw Lord Narayan. They offered their obeisances. Said, "Oh, Lord Narayan, you're here. Where's Krishna?" So they observed, but their focus was Krishna. And they carried on, looking for Krishna. And of course, Krishna, was amused by that pastime. But it shows to us, Krishna's so attractive, so sweet, that it fully captivates the hearts, minds, and consciousness of his devotees. So that is what Prabhupada is indicating here by that. Is that okay? Hare Krishna. Always when these things we remember, same person in two different moods, it becomes a little bit easier to reconcile or understand. You can't, love the same person in one mood and disrespect. No, it doesn't work that way. It just you have more attraction out of the office than in the office. That's the summary of that. Anything else? Okay. So next week we'll continue discussing chapter 9. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki